welcome to Gunners R Us podcast, where we are positively Patreon, and that we are. And here on today's Patreon episode, as I did the end of year and the end of season kind of look back at the bold predictions that Joe and I did last August, I promised on the Patreon I would do a rating system of all the players in our squad, or, I've not got Tommy Setford in here, I haven't got Salmon in here, or Josh Nichols, people that played a part this season that necessarily weren't in the team more regularly. So this is kind of the classic squad, the squad that you kind of imagine could have played any of the games, including into the last game. So I think I have 25, I want to say. I've got two keepers, load of defenders, obviously, the midfield crew, and then all the forwards, including Dowman, I've added because he's such a major part of the season. So we were going to start from back to front, and this episode I'm hoping to be under half an hour. So I'm thinking a minute on each person within reason, because certain people might not need a minute, certain people might need 2 or 3. But this is a rating system out of 10, and I'm going to start with Kepa. So Kepa has had an interesting season because he pretty much only played in the Cups. He didn't appear in the league until the last day of the season. He essentially got us to a Carabao Cup final. He was a part of that crash out in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup against Southampton. And then last day of the season, he actually made an unbelievable save and then struggled with the goal. Wasn't kind of commanding in his box, I would say. But when you look back at the season, even though he didn't play a major part, he kind of played such a minimal part, and he knew that when he joined, because I'm sure they said you're not going to play anything in the Champions League or Premier League. Albeit he did play one game in the Champions League, the last game of the group stage, where he conceded 2. And of the 7, I think in total, we conceded all Champions League. He was 2 of them, so which is quite interesting because that's over a quarter of the goals we conceded were him. And he played 1 game, and Raya played 14, I want to say, in the Champions League. So very interesting in that sense. And obviously when we go back to the Carabao Cup final, I genuinely believe if we played Raya that day, we'd probably win that game. I think we were really good for the first 35 minutes. And when you think back, he made the mistake. Obviously, he kind of threw it in his own net. And also the big story of that was we couldn't break that press because he didn't have the ball ability at his feet. So because of that, but he did actually get us to a final. I'm actually going to give him 5 out of 10. I originally had this down at 4 out of 10. But, when you run the gambit of a cup and you make it to a final, you've got to get some kind of credit for that. And I agree. 5 out of 10. I hope he stays. I think he's a good backup. Next on the agenda is the actual first choice keeper, Raya. What else can we say, really? 3 Golden Gloves in a row. Probably the best goalie in the league. I said on the episode the other day where I gave him my Player of the Year award. I think he's the best keeper in the world currently. I think he's a huge part of why we're doing what we're doing now. Because of that, there's not much really to talk about because I spoke so much on Wednesday about him. It's a 10 out of 10. I don't think you can do any better than what he did. And people might say, well, isn't he doing better winning the quadruple? One, the 2 competitions he played in, he made the final and won the league. And it came down to a penalty kick in which he saved one of the 5 he faced, and our players literally missed the goal on 2 of them. So he couldn't have done more, so I'm going to give him a 10 out of 10. Next up, we're going to start from right to left here. We're going to go Mosquera as part of the centre-back crew, but he kind of became part of the right-back crew because of the injuries. I mentioned the other day the breakout player of the year, maybe Lewis Skelly, but I think Mosquera is the one because, like I've said, 13 million, 20 years old, from Spain. First time in the league. First time really playing at this level in the Champions League and things like that. He came in and didn't just play in position and, deputise in front of Saliba and Gabriel a couple of times early in the season when we had some injuries. But he became a good right back that we could trust to a point where we trusted him in the Champions League final. And like I said, 65 minutes, he made 1 mistake. And that is bound to happen against the best left winger in the world. But because of all that, I think he's been unbelievable. I was close to giving him a 9 out of 10. I've actually gone with 8 out of 10 for Mosquera. For Timber, it's an interesting because recency bias. He's been out of the team. He came in, he played extra time plus that last 30 minutes. So he played about 60 minutes in the last 3 months. But what we have to kind of do is cast our mind back to the rest of the season and how we were kind of putting him in the bracket of the best right backs in the world. And he didn't really do anything other than he got hurt and we didn't see him for a bit. But when he was in the team, there's a reason why this team conceded less goals than we've done in the last few seasons. There's a reason why the Champions League we conceded so little. And all of them play a part when you think of Saliba, Gabriel, Raya, Timber and Hincapié. But there's a reason why those 5 guys allowed it to a point where teams weren't having shots on target. If you remember, team had 1 shot on target in 7 games, something like that in the middle there. And that was when we were running regularly with that back 5. And he was a huge part of that. Again, going to give him 9 out of 10, but I've gone with 8 out of 10, same as Mosquera, for different reasons. Obviously, he's a more of an established player. But because we hadn't seen him for the last 3 months and he didn't play the full season, I know that's not his kind of fault. It's just an injury. I don't think I can give him the full 9 out of 10, but he definitely deserves it. But I'm going to go 8 out of 10, the same as Mosquera. And the last right back on the list here is Ben White. Bit part player of the majority of the season, as he was last year. He was ran into the ground by Arteta for a long time, and then we brought Timber in to give him that extra cover. Timber goes down with an ACL. Ben White ends up playing every 3 days for a year, and we've kind of seen the repercussions of that. He missed the majority of last year. He's missed large portions of this year, including he's ended the season. Unfortunately, he got back to his best form right before that knee injury that Gary Neville blamed him on for whatever reason. But if he had not got injured there and finished that season and we win the league and then he plays the Champions League final, there's a very small chance here that he makes a 9 out of 10. But because he was kind of in and out and didn't feature for large portions, but had a really good flow at the end and really helped us get over the line. Because, Arteta's talked about impact players and, the game changes at the end of games. We actually saw that at the end of the season. People like Ben White, Lewis Skelly, they came into the team almost fresh, having not been in it for a while. Calafiori, another one. And they kind of got us over the line. They kind of re-rallied and gave us a breath of fresh air and got us over the line. So for that, I'm giving Ben White 7 out of 10. And then on to our centre-back pairing. We'll start with Saliba. They say the Rolls Royce of centre-backs. I think Saliba's been unbelievable this year. I think this is his best year so far. When I say so far, is because I think he's got better in there. I think by the looks of it, he's been carrying an injury a lot of it, and I felt like it was warranted because I think we noticed it. I think he kind of ran. The way he was running looked different. Unbelievable again. Like I said, the defence, all these guys could get 10 out of 10 for how well they've played this season. But I don't think I can give him 10 out of 10. Very close to doing. I'm going to give him 9 out of 10, but that's simply because even though he was perfect almost, he almost played a perfect game, I couldn't really, and maybe, with centre-backs, sometimes you want them less involved. I can't think of off the top of my head straight away, a clearance or a block or a tackle or a goal or something that makes him a 10 out of 10 this season. But he definitely deserves it. But I'm going to go 9 out of 10. But speaking of 10 out of 10, Gabriel next. I am giving him the 10 out of 10 because you think back to, and again, like I said, with centre-backs, I don't know if it's a good thing to be seen as much as maybe he is compared to Saliba. But the way in which he's won us a lot of games this year, with especially that era, that kind of period where we were winning with a lot of set pieces. I think in Newcastle, that's a huge sliding doors moment. Then also just, I think of Atletico when they rounded the keeper and he made that tackle. The couple blocks he did in the Atletico game and the quarterfinals of Champions League and in the league, near the end of the season particularly. He's just been a player that I think when we lose him, we lose a lot of kind of desire or motivation or just, he's just a big personality, a big player, and I think we're missing something when he's not there. So I'm giving him the 10 out of 10. Moving to our left back core is Hincapié on loan, going to be made permanent this year with 60 million from Leverkusen. He was a part of the unbeaten team over at Leverkusen. We weren't sure what we were getting, whether it was back up to Gabriel. Were we thinking ahead, like for the future, ahead of Gabriel? I don't know. Maybe we still are. I do not know, because obviously as each year passes, you can't necessarily keep some of the players. But I think he's been unbelievable. I think, again, another person with so much kind of energy, drive, kind of the crowd really got on board with him early on. And he has that desire that you can see he wants to win. And I think years from now, maybe 2 years down the line, like I'd love to get another couple of years out of Sleeper Gabriel partnership. You could see him becoming that character that Gabriel is, and getting that crowd fired up, winning headers. I don't know. He just plays with a passion. They say he's got the dog in him, and he certainly does. And there's been some really big tackles he made throughout the season, and you can almost think back to them and be like, that was a moment where he made that tackle. I can't remember who it was against near the end of a game. Might be against Everton. It was before the Dowman goal. We were winning 1-0. We really needed to win. And he gets that throw. He makes an unbelievable tackle where he kicks out for a throw, not a corner, and he celebrates it. Then him and Gabriel got for a header, and they knock out for a corner. Then Dowman scores from that counter-attack from that corner. But I remember that game, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want a guy kind of chasing a guy, flapping. He's just straight into the tackle, and for that, I'm giving him 9 out of 10. The other fullback is Calafiori. The reason we've seen Hincapié so much this year is because of the injuries again to Calafiori, and it's kind of been a part of his career really, from Roma to now. And it looked like a guy who would never play football again at 17. And I think he's such a good player, and he changes the way in which we play football. When he comes in, I think he's a 1 in a million player that from left back he can dictate a game, and he's a great defender. You think of the little scorpion kind of block he did this season, that was huge. He scores on the opening day against Man United from a set piece. It's just the injuries that have kind of not allowed us to see him as much as we want. We didn't see him much last year. That's why Maitland-Niles, what is wrong with that? Lewis Skelly played so much last year, and then this year we bring in Hincapié to help him. Hincapié played a lot of minutes to a point where he couldn't even jump at the end of that Champions League final. But I love Calafiori. There's a big rumour that even though we're talking about Jesus and Martinelli and Ben White and Norgard, Keppers and these guys that might be moved on, and we kind of expect that, maybe even Nwaneri, they were saying that there's a very high chance there's going to be a very unpopular loss of a player soon. We don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know who, but it's starting to look like there's a bit of smoke here that maybe Calafiori's wanted by Perez of Real Madrid. They look like they've got Konate over the line, and he's mentioned another defender. Apparently they've spoken to him. I mean, as much as I want Calafiori to stay, he must be looking at going, well, can I be their main man in defence at Real Madrid, or do I stay here and kind of have to fight for my spot against Hincapié? And you can kind of see, I can understand his lure to it. I mean, the way he is as a person with the fashion and all that kind of stuff, Spain and Real Madrid, and the similarities with the hair to like Sergio Ramos. I could see he looks like he is a Real Madrid player already. I don't want it to happen, but there is a slight rumour, and that doesn't affect his rating. But I'm going to give him 7 out of 10, and I'll keep you updated on anything I hear about the Calafiori situation. The next one is Zubimendi, and again, I was controversial in saying he was the transfer of the summer, and I stick by it. I'm actually giving him an 8 out of 10, and again, similar to Timber, we have to kind of not go by recency bias, and I don't think he did anything wrong, and he didn't get injured. He was available, he played so many minutes, more minutes than anyone else. And when we needed him at right back, he played right back. When we needed him for the last 5 minutes, he played the last 5 minutes. When we needed a goal early in the season, he got him. Just a brilliant player in the air, brilliant midfielder. I think he's been unbelievable all season. Maybe just ran his legs into the ground by the end, but that's not his fault. That is just not getting split time. So I'm going to give him 8 out of 10. Next is Norgard. It's a 6 out of 10. Not much to be said on Norgard other than it could be a 5, similar to Kepa. I really enjoyed him when he came in and played in the Champions League and the Cups and stuff like that. He played centre-back at times. He played midfield at times. I actually think he deserved a lot more minutes in the Premier League, really. I think we could have allowed Zubimendi more time to recover and use him a lot more. I think we could have trusted him more. He's a player that played over 40 games the year before, and then this year played, I think it was 70-odd minutes of Premier League football total. So a massive drop-off. And the reason I'm going with the 6 out of 10 is simply because of the story that it seems that he spoke to the team in that run-in and really helped people shift people's mentalities in that kind of run-in. And I think locker room guys, they talk about it in NFL a lot. Some people aren't necessarily the best players. They aren't even necessarily the players that start. But sometimes you have players that they're locker room people. They're people that keep everyone kind of adrift. They keep, afloat. They keep them motivated. They check on people. They keep everything kind of running in a backstage sense. And it seems that he is that. And all season, when they spoke to him about lack of game time, he said, "Nope, I'm absolutely loving it," and all that. And you remember Jorginho in his last year, he was a lot of the time not coming on, but almost managing from the sidelines, warming up in the 85th minute when there's no more subs to be made. He was down there kind of coaching, almost like an extension of Arteta, and I wonder if that's what Norgard might become next season if we don't move him on. Next into the midfield, we got Rice. And similar to Raya, similar to Gabriel, I think there's certain players this year that the three particular, and this is the 3 10 out of 10s. There's no other 10 out of 10s on the list. He's talking, we're talking Ballon d'Or year, we're talking Premier League Player of the Year. It's just, he's been such a constant and such an engine, been available, scored goals, got assists, maybe not as many as we want, but I think, almost the perception is ahead of anything, and he is a 10 out of 10 player. I think we've had a 10 out of 10 year out of him every single year, to be honest, but I think this year was flawless, and it ended with the Premier League, so not much more I can say on Rice. I'm going to go 10 out of 10. Next is Maitland, my word, do you reckon I'll ever stop doing that? Miles Lewis-Skelly. I should write down Lewis-Skelly instead of MLS. A player that we wanted to feature at the start of the season. I think a lot of us had him in the starting lineup before the first game got kicked. Then we started to realise, I don't know if there's a spot for him, and we want there to be a spot for him. And we start clambering from in midfield like we did with Zinchenko in the past, the way we've talked about Lewis-Skelly even last year. It wasn't happening. It looked like the writing was on the wall. There was talk in January of teams like Man United being in for him and West Ham being in for him. As fans, there was fans saying, well, it's pure profit, hence his post at the end of the season. And what we didn't know was what was bubbling was a midfield role for him in training until he had the right amount of information to be able to release him. And they released him in the most pressurised situation. He's a player I really like anyway, but at 19 to be thrown into the first time in your senior career playing in your rightful position, you played in academy level, but in the run-in, that's when he arrived. He arrived only in the run-in. And what happened when he was added to the starting 11 majority of the time? We got to a Champions League final and we got it over the line in the Premier League. This is times where we usually go out in a semi or we start to crumble. The only difference was he was added. He was the added ingredient. Because of that, I'm giving him 8 out of 10 simply for that cameo at the end of the season. Next up is Moreno. Tough one because I think he's been unbelievable for us generally. I think he was really good this year. You remember he was playing up front in the games against Bayern Munich. Some of those really unforgettable games against Tottenham that week. He was the forward really. And you forget how good a football player this is because he's playing out of position. He had a very complicated foot injury. He returned for the last day of the season. He didn't get on in the Champions League final. He's going away with Spain. Just for him being there and being such a professional and also doing so well in the first half and what he's done in the previous years, I'm going to give him 7 out of 10. I think I could have given him 8, but I'm going to give him 7. The next up is Odegaard. And again, you realise how many injuries we've had when you start rating these players because every time you get to someone, you're like, well, I know he only played 6 months. It's so hard to rate someone based on that, but when you don't see him for 6 months, that has to affect the score. And with Odegaard, he had, I think it was the shoulder injuries early on. He kept having those, and then he had the ankle injury. There was some issues where he went away with the international but came back, and there was complications. And we obviously saw not the best of him last year after he had the baby, and there was a lot of conversation that he was tired and stuff like that, which I'm sure there's truth to it. But this year, I think in the moments he was back into the team, we remembered how good he was because he binds together everything. He comes and collects the ball deep. He goes high. He presses. He's so smart at kind of telling people what to do. When you think of the Carabao Cup final when they get that goal where, it's the Premier League where Nico O'Reilly kind of breaks free through the middle and Haaland scores the winner. You can see him pressing, but saying to Martinelli, go inside, do not go right, and then Martinelli goes out right. And it's just, you can almost see that he has such an understanding of, well, if we do all this, nothing will happen, like we saw against PSG in the final. He's just a smart player, maybe not the flairiest player anymore. I don't know what's happened there, but I think he's a player that if you can keep in this squad, and I know people have him moving on and all that, maybe cashing in, I think he's just such an intelligent player to have around. I think he's just very good, and because of that, I'm going to give him 7 out of 10. Just simply for that bit of change of game he did against West Ham, he could get an 8 out of 10, but I'm going to go with 7. The other number 10 in the crew here is Eze. Let it all work out. I think people underrate how good he's been in the last 12 months, including the Palace stint. The goals against North London Derby, the big goal against Newcastle, goals in the other cups. The performances he's put on, he's added something to us that is less robotic. He's given us an opportunity. He's got a goal of the season against Leverkusen. He's got a swagger about him that almost calmed everyone down. He literally went to the manager, by the sounds of it, and said, you need to give us space, you need to let us relax, otherwise we're not going to get the best out of us. And then we won the league. You know, you could see it literally change game to game after he had this conversation. So with that in mind, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. I think there's room for him to give even better next year. Havertz comes on for a 10-minute cameo, hurts his knee. He is out until February, I want to say, maybe March. So pretty much misses the whole season. Since he's been back, again, I think we don't realise how good he is, because I think Gyökeres held down the fort extremely well, as you'll see from the rating I'm going to give him. But when he's in the team, you really do start to notice a quality. And it's that there's a quality that maybe he is not the most potent goal scorer, but similar to Odegaard, he sets the press. He does all these intelligent things. And, I mean, he's played in 2 Champions League finals. He's scored 2. He's one of 2 players to ever score in a Champions League final for Arsenal, and the only one in open play. He scores the last goal of the season that wins us the league, essentially, against Burnley. He also scores massive goals against Leverkusen, against, I want to say, Sporting, he scored. Just big goals. He started to kind of pop up with just very important goals at the end. I'm sure if Gyökeres had the start, he would have got them, as he did get 21 in all comps. But he just brings something. But because of the lack of playing, I'm going to have to give him 7 out of 10. Trossard is next. And even though he had a bit of a quiet time throughout the season, I remember that game he was unbelievable against Sunderland away, and we ended up drawing 2-2. But the way in which he came in, got that goal against West Ham, and I'd say this is the first time in the last 2-3 years where we could actively say Trossard was the starting left wing, and it wasn't a toss-up between him and Martinelli. It was, no, he is our best left option. And because of that, I'm going to give him 9 out of 10, which is elusive. I don't think only Saliba got a 9 out of 10 so far. Martinelli, 7 out of 10. Genuinely, the 2 most memorable parts of his season will be he scored that one Premier League goal he scored this year was against Man City at home. The dink over Donnarumma that, in the end, I think could be a game winner. A league winner for us. It's just so early in the season. But such an important goal, and a goal that only he, I think, in the team would have scored. And the other one was his actual really good record in, especially the group stage of the Champions League. He was on course to get like record numbers. He was banging in goals for fun in the Champions League. So because of all those things, I could have gone 6 out of 10, but because of those things, I'm going to 7 out of 10. Next up is Madueke, and I'm actually going to go 8 out of 10. I think a lot of people might have him at 6 or a 7. He had some great performances in the Cups, including Champions League. I mean, winning us a penalty. He also could have also won us the game by winning us a penalty in the Champions League, and really had a go at the Mendes in that game. But the unbelievable goal he scored in the group stage of the Champions League. He got a goal. He got some goals in the Premier League. He started getting assists. And remember early on when Saka wasn't able to play, and for example, we had him playing at Anfield. He ends up getting injured in that game, missing a period. But throughout this season, Saka's not played a lot of minutes compared to usual. And Norse Dowman not played a lot of minutes. So someone's been playing our right wing a majority of the season, and it is Madueke. Like, people are underrating maybe because of his output, but when you look at Doku and in the league. Sometimes up until the last 3 games, he had 2 Premier League goals. Sometimes output doesn't necessarily mean anything other than the goals or the assists they get, but they don't see the movement they're doing to the other team and kind of giving them kittens essentially, and having to double up and make room for other teams, for other players in the team. So with Madueke, I'm going to give him 8 out of 10. I think I'd like to see a lot better out of him, but I just think he's actually solidified that right side for us when we haven't been able to have our best player available. And Saka is also going to be an 8 out of 10. Simply because at our standards, we expect a 10 out of 10 out of Saka every time. He was on course to do that last year until he had that big injury. That injury is going to have a knock-on effect, and it did this year. I'm hoping, touch wood, injury-free summer, we might get the best out of Saka next year. And obviously, him learning more, in the Champions League final and near the end of the season when we had Ben White and Odegaard with him, you started to see the old Saka, and it is combinations with him. I think when he can kind of get on song and realise, okay, if I dummy that, you can do that, and if you do that, I'll go around the corner and I know he'll find me. And we see that with Odegaard and Havertz a lot with him, especially in the final when Havertz had the opportunity at the end of the first half. The player's still in there. He won us a game at Brighton. Springs to mind. The deliveries on set pieces have been unbelievable, as of Declan Rice, but just not up to his usual standards. I'm going to go 8 to 10. 8 out of 10. Next up, last right winger, Dalman. To be the youngest player to start a Premier League game, the youngest player to feature in a Premier League game, and then the youngest player to score in a Premier League, would have been the youngest player ever to be in a Champions League final. He played in the Champions League this year. All those records mean something. And then obviously he changed that game against Everton, which again could have been a sliding doors moment. We were really struggling for a lot of that game. He gets the pre-assist and then wins us the game with that moment. And that moment alone deserves a 7 out of 10. So I'm going to give him 7 out of 10. I think we got a lot more out of Dalman, but I'm so glad we got as much as we did this year. Next is Jesus with a 6 out of 10. It's been so helpful having him there. And I think back, and he had that little spell where he started to play a couple games, and again, it's so hard in hindsight to kind of remember moments. But there was a part where people started wanting to see him starting over Gyökeres. I'm glad they didn't. I wasn't necessarily in that camp. He gets a lot of shots on target. He did play more games than you realise. In that game against Wolves at home, where I think it's an own goal, but he kind of creates it. Big moments like that do happen, and I think there was a game, I think it was Wolves away, the 2-2. When it was at 2-1, he rushes something, doesn't kind of hold up play, allows them to kind of break, and that's what gets the second goal. And after that, we pretty much didn't see him, and I think I earmarked that as, nope, that can't be done in this team. And it's just, as much as he's not been that important to us this year, he has it in other spells, and also having that depth of a 5-time Premier League winner as your third string centre forward. And when Moreno went down and Havertz was down, him and Gyökeres were our only shot at number 9. So he did hold it down over Christmas. And because of that, I'm going to give him 6 out of 10. I just don't think it was his most influential year ever. And last but not least, we got Gyökeres, and I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. And yes, I am a Gyökeres fan. I just think for many years, people said if we bought a legit, villainous, proper goal scorer, I mean, he doesn't have to be that good. He just got to pump the ball into the back of the net. We said that for years. That could be the difference between us winning the league or not. We buy that player, we win the league. I don't think that can be complete coincidence. Is his play great? No. Is he the most technical? No. Does he work extremely hard for the team every 3 days, and he did all season? Yeah. Did he score 21 goals in all comps? Yeah. Did he get a couple assists? Yeah. Could he have had a lot more? Yes. And not because of him either. It took about 5 months for our players to allow him to even run onto a ball, and then near the end we started doing that kind of, if we're under pressure, up and over, kind of like a drop kick in the air. And he would do a thing where he kind of like back into the player, and he was starting to kind of cause problems with last man, getting away from them. He just looked like a different player in the kind of last 3 months. So I think we might get the best out of him next year. There's absolute nonsense online. People saying we should move him on now. Same with Madueke. I think, no, I don't know what we're thinking. Who are you thinking again? Unless they're thinking Mbappe or someone. But he's not going to work that hard. He's not going to do these things. And you defend from the front, and he did that all season. And he got the goals. He's a good character. I really like him, and I'm giving him 9 out of 10. So, as for the manager, 10 out of 10. As for the team, 10 out of 10. No notes. That's been my ratings. No one was as low as any lower than 5, right? Yeah, Kepa is 5, and I think that's the only 5. A few 10 out of 10s, a couple 9 out of Saliba, Trossard, and Gyökeres 9 out of 9. The 8s, there's quite a few. We got Saka, Madueke, Eza, Lewis Skelly, Zubamendi, Timber, and Mosquera. 7 out of 10, we've got Ben White, Calafiori, Moreno, Odegaard, Havertz, Martinelli, Dowman. 6 out of 10, you got Jesus and Norgard. And then 5 out of 10, you had Kepa. So majority of those numbers are pretty high, which shows you how good a season it was. And it's one of those seasons where I think only in time will people understand just how good it was, because 2 cup finals, including a European Cup final, and winning the league against a juggernaut like Man City while having a lot of injuries is quite something. And by the looks of it, early indications, I'll probably do an episode next week as well where I kind of predict the transfer window right at the start of it. Because I think that'd be fun. Ingoings, outgoings, and I'll do like how much we'll get for each player and all that kind of stuff. We'll do that on probably Monday. But hopefully you've enjoyed this Patreon episode. If you're listening on iTunes and Spotify, give us a 5-star review. This is the kind of stuff that we're doing over on Patreon. It's a little sneak peek of one of the episodes we're doing. So hopefully you enjoyed the match. Well, not the match, the player ratings. And I'll see you on Monday for a usual episode of Gunners R Us podcast. Bye-bye.